Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode
18.
18. Hey, before we get going, we are
Kind of excited.
Super excited to offer our listening audience a workshop for Valentine's Day.
Woo woo. Because obviously we want you to have the best Valentine's Day ever. But more than just a day, we want you to have the best relationship ever.
Right. Okay. Every guy out there, I know you've done it. The morning of Valentine's Day, you're rushing out and you go, oh, shoot, I better do something or I'm getting nothing tonight. So you run to the grocery store and you stand in line with the hundreds of other guys that have chocolates in one arm and flowers in the other, ready for Valentine's Day. Well, guess what? Forget those.
Leave them behind.
We have a much better gift. We're offering a 3-session workshop,
which we're super excited about. We'll meet for 3 Fridays in a row for an hour and a half on Zoom with you and your lovely spouses. And we'll talk about all the things to create intimacy, connection, desire, eroticism.
We would love for you to join us. It's a Valentine's package. $125 per couple. Includes the live workshop, materials, and a private 45-minute coaching session.
With us.
That's right. This is going to happen February 21st, the 28th, and March 7th.
At 7 o'clock to 8:30 Central Time. And we will leave a link on our website for you to register and to join us. We really hope that you will come and join us. It's going to be a fabulous time, but more importantly than just the time we spend together, we really believe that this will help your overall relationship, which, though we love chocolates and flowers, and by all means get those if you want, but have a far more lasting effect after the chocolate and flowers are gone.
So join us for our Hearts Entwined, a Valentine's Day workshop for couples, where you'll discover the courage to learn to love and be vulnerable.
Explore how your self-worth and connection really create and fuel intimacy.
And then learn those two things, how they come together to create desire and keep passion alive.
Or even just create passion if you're feeling like roommates.
Wherever you're at in the process, we'll have some steps on how you can either increase that passion and desire, or you can even create it from nothing.
Because we are creators.
That's right. All right. Love it. We're so excited. We hope you join us and we look forward to it.
Yes, we do.
So now, starting our 18th episode.
It's kind of a spicy one, I think.
Well, we continue to learn over and over again about things, about relationships, and get new insights. And this week we were able to participate in a workshop ourselves, which was amazing, and got some quick insights on our first session that really have kept us talking for almost a day and a half straight, right?
Yes.
It really has brought up some ideas around anxiety and the reason why we have anxiety in the sexual relationship. And so we wanted to talk about it from both perspectives, from the higher desire perspective
and the lower desire perspective.
So why? Why do we have anxiety around our sexuality?
Well, I think anxiety is an inherent part of life. So because we're humans, we will have anxiousness around our worth, around whether we're enough. We'll have anxiousness about even our personalities or our capacities. We'll have anxiousness in uncertainty, unknowns. And so if you're a human being, you have a brain that has a neocortex that is always creating meanings, always looking for ways to organize and understand the world outside of you. And I think just because we can't always understand and organize everything outside of us, like it's just literally not possible, there's an inherent amount of anxiety.
Yeah, it's really because, like you said, our brains create these meanings, whether we want them or not. Even if we choose not to create a meaning, that's a meaning unto itself, right? Yes. It means we've chose not to create a meaning. But our mind is always going and trying to understand and create meaning behind this. And so when we add someone else in this relationship, and then we add the exposure of the sexual relationship, there is always going to be room for our brains to try to make sense of what this means. And then when it can't make complete sense of it and understand it, it's going to trigger anxiety.
Well, I think meanings are a way that we try and organize our world. And part of the world and relationships and ourselves and others is a certain amount of just change, uncertainty, unknown, things that can't be necessarily defined. And in that gap, as you said, there is always some anxiety.
Right. Remember, the privileged side of our brain is really trying to keep us alive.
At all costs.
At all costs, no matter what it is. And part of it, keeping us alive, means to be accepted or wanted by others, and especially someone that we desire, right?
Like, especially. Yeah. Like, these will come up. Anxiety is much higher when we really care or are invested in the other person's opinion of us.
Right. I think it's a true sign of an intimate relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because you really care what that person thinks.
Right. And we think when we're getting married, a lot of times in the first stages of relationships, before we really know each other and we're just full of all these endorphins and happy things, all of the meanings of being with this person are, they love me, they adore me, they make me a better version of me, I love who I am with them. And so all of these meanings like kind of reduce anxiety because they're so validating and so affirming. And then you get married and you start having natural conflicts meaning like whether you spend money or save money, whether you haven't sex or whether you don't, whether you parent your child this way or that way, right? You start having natural conflicts, and all of a sudden this person that you really care about, their opinion invalidates you, and that causes a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, so we established that anxiety is natural and why it comes from the human mind and what it's trying to do. So how does it show up differently between a high and low desire person? What do you think?
I think the higher desire person generally wants to move into sexual intimacy because the validation in that calms their anxiety. The feeling of acceptance or being loved or known is calming to that anxiety for them. And so they'll tend to pursue or try to move towards that, you know, when they're having a stressful day at work or when they really are feeling unloved, or even just in general, they are seeking out the validation of the intimacy. The lower desire is generally moving away from intimacy because they feel like they can't belong to themselves. It's too exposing, it's too vulnerable, it's too revealing. So they're moving away from intimacy to try and like lower their anxiety.
Yeah. So it's almost between like a soother, like a blankie or a pacifier for a baby, right? That we're looking for as a higher desire person. And then it does the exact opposite for low desire, which is interesting because that's what causes this mess that we have, right? Because here's the cycle we get into, right? The higher desire person is feeling that anxiety and they're not dealing with it. And so they're reaching for some validation to soothe it, to let them know they're right. And so they're reaching out to that lower desire person who feels the same anxiety, and their natural instinct is to run away from it. So it becomes the pursuer and the runner-wayer.
Distancer.
Runner-wayer?
Runner-wayer. Maybe distancer.
This is exactly where we found ourselves. 100%. It was.
But both sides are feeling anxiety. They're just responding differently.
Yeah, and I think I didn't really realize I had anxiety, and I think it's easier to identify anxiety in the lower desire person, maybe. And the higher desire person is maybe masked a little more because we come off a little more confident and forward. When you think of anxiety, you're thinking like, oh, I'm not confident and I'm scared and nervous about it. But I think it's masked a little bit better.
Anxiety can also move you forward. Like for some people, it is the thing that causes them to move forward into more like of a fight or a seeking. And for some, it is more that freeze or fawn, like that move away, that shut down. So,
and I don't think in general, I think what we should say right now, anxiety isn't bad in general. You know, I've coached people that think they're broken because they're anxious, and really we're like, hey, this could be your superpower if used correctly, right? Because anxiety is a force that can drive you forward in the right direction. So if you
it
take
can
that,
be productive.
yeah. But if you take it and let it overwhelm you and keep you from moving, that's when it becomes unproductive. Or you do, so that's from, I think, the lower desire person. And from the higher desire person, if you do not choose, you do it, what's the good word? Haphazardly, or maybe without boundaries. Help me with a good word, babe. Like, I'm thinking if you take that anxiety and you react without adding logic to it, that's when I think it becomes unhealthy, right? When you just become an actor, that anxiety is an actor upon you instead of a driving force to let you think about what it is and what's it asking you to do and how you can move into something and push something. It just pushes you without you making a choice. So that doesn't mean you don't have a choice, but you're just reacting to it, trying to get rid of it instead of understanding it and choosing what it means to move you forward. So if that anxiety in a higher desire person wakes you up to thinking, hey, I'm looking at this and I have these high desires and I feel this anxiety and this anxiousness, and you try to discover what it is, and then it helps you move forward purposefully, maybe is a good word.
Can you describe how it would help you move forward purposely?
So we'll go back to my life, right? So I think anxiety drove a lot of my actions. I masked it. I didn't call it anxiety, but I think it was, right? So when I was looking and seeking for validation because I didn't feel okay about myself, my anxiety would push me forward to actually extract that validation out of you. And the way that I would do it is that I would react in a way that I would try to manipulate, try to take, and try to soothe myself by having you give. And the interesting part about this is that even when you did give sexually at the time, you weren't doing it in a way that you desired it yourself. And so as out of obligation. And I knew that. And so it wouldn't soothe me at all. It wouldn't validate me at all. In fact, it would do this opposite.
It seemed to offer that.
It's what I thought would offer that.
Right.
But in the end, it did just the opposite, because here I knew I had taken from someone again. And so instead of validating me, it was very unvalidating.
Invalidating?
Invalidating? Yeah, that's a better word. Invalidating. It was very invalidating because it was here I wanted to be chosen and desired, and I had to manipulate myself into a situation to get what I wanted. And in the end, it's empty. Like, you really feel empty when that happens. And so here, if we use the example, I think this is what drove the cheap validation through pornography, right? So this is when you're watching pornography, you're getting all the endorphins come with it, but you're also, that person desires you, like, on the other end, right?
There's no rejection.
There's no rejection. There's no risk of being rejected. And so you're going to get that validation, and whether it's false and it is false, but in your mind, you're seeking that out, and it soothes you for a moment. It gives you that soothing for a moment, but in the end, it doesn't give you what you really want.
Right. But for a moment, it does, or it seems to.
It seems to mask it for a while.
Yeah.
And that's why I think a lot of folks that get into pornography, they can do things like binge it for a while. Like they'll watch, and it'll feed it and it'll get it. And then it'll be a point where, like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And you'll stop, and you can have long times of periods where you never even come in contact with it or desire it. And then those moments of high anxiety, which you can't do, you fall back into it and come across it, and it starts that cycle again. So again, it's the way to mask or soothe yourself. There's another word we use, and I can't bring it to my mind. What is it? Buffer. That's the word. It's used as what we call buffering. So it's, hey, I'm going to use it instead of thinking about the anxiety, instead of walking into it and actually coming to my partner and saying, I'm anxious about this, or this is what I'm trying to get. This is going to mask it for a moment.
So give me the opposite then. That's how, like, the unproductive anxiety, or not like dealing productively with your anxiety, that leads to the buffering or the porn. What is a productive example of feeling that anxiety and allowing it to lead you from a place of integrity?
Yeah, I think now I recognize that it is anxiety, right? That I'm trying to
What does your anxiety sound like?
sound like
or feel like.
emptiness or a longingness or a loneliness, or it can be a lot of things, right? Invalidation. I'm struggling with maybe things outside our relationship that are making me feel that I'm not enough or not worthy of something.
Like work stress or
Yeah, it
something
could be work
like that?
stress. It could be raising children. It could be all kinds of things. But work is a good one. It happens all the time at work as you go through different scenarios. And, there's moments where you feel like you triumph, and there's moments that you feel like you completely fail.
Mm-hmm.
And probably in those moments you completely fail, you have this feeling of emptiness, of not being enough, not being desirable, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like you desire an intimate relationship to have your partner choose you, you really want to be able to make an impact at work where people are like, okay, we need you and you're valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it goes back to the primitive side of our brain, really trying to say, if you are adding value at work, then you will be kept at work. And if you're kept, you can string it along.
Safe, right?
You kept at work, you'll have a paycheck. If you have a paycheck, you'll be able to feed your family. You'll be able to feed your family, the people will love you. Like your brain can just quickly go down the whole roll of like
it does
this
it
one
so
little
fast.
thing. I just had a major change in my work with my work structure, and it wasn't something that I was looking forward to and desiring it. I was told right before I went on Christmas vacation, and I got downright depressed, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally did. So, because my mind took me to places of, I really messed up. I was no good. I didn't do what I needed to do. I let people down. I didn't accomplish things I put out to accomplish. And then I'd even remember the moment I kind of come to grips, okay, that's not it. I'm going to be okay moving forward. And then I was traveling somewhere to go get something. And in that, I was just playing through, okay, well, if this is my last paycheck because they're going to fire me, then how long can I last and what can I do? Like my mind
doing
was
disaster planning, worst case scenario.
Worst case disaster recovery because of the anxiety. So none of that moved me in the right place. That was I sat in it for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And I was just, like I said, almost depressed, like not able to function. And I sat in it for so long and it wasn't productive. So that was the unproductive stuff. So that's what it kind of feels like and looks at. So the difference now for me is when I see it, I can recognize it. And even this time I did recognize it, but I still couldn't figure out how to process through it. Mm-hmm. But it's that recognizing and starting that, saying, this is something in me that needs to be processed and worked through, instead of buffered or ignored or put away. Mm-hmm. These feelings are coming up. And so my brain is trying to do something, is trying to make meaning around this, is trying to get me to a comfortable place because that's where it wants to be. Mm-hmm. And the only way to really get to that comfort place is to go through it. Mm-hmm. And it's not pleasant and it's not fun. Just getting through it and processing through it. And so I think that's the major difference for me now, where I would never deal with these things and process through them, because in my mind, it made me less than or not worthy of all the things that I had, including you and the family and all the above. And now I can still have those thoughts come to me. Like I said, just even almost to the point of depression, which I've rarely had in my life. I rarely suffer from it. And if you do, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a new experience for me, but it was like that. I just want to lay in bed and do nothing kind of feeling. But really knowing that, reaching for porn or reaching for food or reaching for whatever it is to buffer it away is not going to get me through this. Mm-hmm. And while there's moments of delay, in the end, you're going to have to process through it to be able to get through it. And I think that's the big difference now, is recognizing, knowing that I need to process through it, and that until I do, it's just going to get bigger and bigger if I don't.
Right. So you made space for acceptance that there was anxiety, allowing you to feel it, work through that. And sometimes working through it is, more than just a few moments or more than once. Sometimes it presents multiple times, as yours did. And instead of looking for that quick fix, you're like, no, I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to allow this. Yeah.
And it was about a week or so of doing this. Mm-hmm. And it was a struggle for us too, because I could communicate to you that something was going on. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get through that right away. And there was no way that we were going to be intimate in any way during this process. Like you couldn't get close to me because I was shut off, or I was so anxious that I knew that if it was, I'd be grabbing for it and trying to use it to soothe me. And so that's the difficult part. But that's what drove me to chase you, really, I believe. Before me not even understanding that it was anxiety and that I was trying to soothe myself. I just thought it was a natural kind of thing. Like I got married, so now I should get laid on a regular basis. Trying that, knowing that didn't help soothe it because it felt awful, because it felt like I was extracting something from someone that I cared for deeply. And just, man, even saying out loud now, it just feels like a heavy, heavy cycle. Like if you're in that cycle, I get it, right? And it's a tough cycle to break. That's the bad news. The good news is that if you can recognize it, you can break it. And that doesn't make these things go away. Like the anxiety didn't disappear, and I just never have anxiety. It still shows up heavily.
We're not supposed to get rid of it. We're going to have emotions, and they're going to come and go. So you don't want to make anxiety like a forbidden emotion. It's definitely there for a purpose. And I think one of the things I've noticed coaching higher desire spouses is a high level of dissatisfaction when they are high desire or high anxiety desire, I should say. Because I want to also say that you can have healthy desire and it doesn't have to stem from anxiety. So we're talking about the type of high desire that does stem, is led by, driven by, motivated by anxiety, the seeking, the getting. And I think on the other side of that is also this perpetual dissatisfaction. Clients will be talking about how they want this and they want this and they can't have it and they need more. And like there's something attached because they're trying to get from someone else, and the other spouse can't actually give them that. They're perpetually dissatisfied.
Right. So because you're trying to use it to get rid of the anxiety and you're seeking someone else to do that for you, you can't do that, right? And that's why this always, I want more, I want to get it. So if you'd only give me a certain position in bed, then it would actually do it. If you would be more erotic in this way, or if we would have it more often, or if you would initiate it, or then you would be, so you keep on fighting these escalations or these different points that will try to get to what you're trying to get. But
what you think you want.
What you really want. But what you really want is to be able to soothe that anxiety and be in a place that has resolved it. That won't resolve it. And so you keep changing it, thinking, okay, if I get this, then it will. If I get this, then it will. Then this will. It's a frustrating place to be. And all along the way, you just get more angry at your spouse and more frustrated at them because you're like, you're not helping me get what I want. And in reality, they can't. No matter what they do, they can't, because they give in and give you sex. You've taken it from them because it's not a desirous place, right? And so it just starts that cycle again.
From the other side of the coin, the low desire is generally trying to figure out how to keep themselves safe or keep their sense of themselves. And if they are being pursued or they're saying no thank you and the no's aren't heard or respected, then they're constantly feeling protective. Like in order to be in close proximity with their spouse, they have to have walls, they have to be guarded, they have to be protected. They don't feel, and I say this cautiously because I'm not saying like that higher desire spouses are unsafe, but often the language used is a feeling of unsafety. And so that anxiousness feels unsafe. Not that anyone is actually in like physical danger. It's not what I'm suggesting. But the more anxious you feel, the more unsafe you feel, the more you withdraw, the more you pull away, the more you feel like, I can't be in this space because there isn't actually room for me. So
that's interesting because that's all a reaction to what I was bringing to you. But there's probably anxiety that's brought up in a natural way, maybe even now that I'm behaving myself in a better way. Or if the spouse is behaving, that higher desire spouse is behaving themselves. We've had people that we coach that still are anxious about stepping into their sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that. I've opened the kimono on mine.
Yeah. I think
bust the door down on yours.
let's do it. I think that sexuality, because especially the act of intimacy, intercourse, sexual intimacy, because they are so vulnerable. You're literally like exposing your entire body, your desires, your mind, your heart. Like the whole experience is extremely vulnerable. I think that is inherently anxious. And if you aren't yet comfortable, say, with your body, and I was not comfortable with my body. I was not comfortable with the ideas of sexuality. If you aren't comfortable with any of those, then in a sexual setting, you will be riddled with anxiety, because here it's kind of not on display, but it's like there's nothing, there's nowhere to hide. Like you can't be fully participating and uncertain that that this is good or what you want.
So we're out of this kind of vicious cycle, right?
Right.
Where I'm trying to extract from you now that makes you anxious because you feel like you have to give, but you don't really in it.
Yes.
Is there still anxiety when you step into to sex? And if so, what does it look like and what do you do?
It's a great question. Is there still anxiety? I think there's still this, I would say it's far less, but there are times, especially if we are experimenting or exploring new vistas, the uncertainty of it still does bring up anxiety. I think what helps me is knowing that I can stop at any moment, or I can say no, or hey, we need to detour. And so I can still feel the uncertainty or anxiety, but I also know I'm still in control of me. I haven't lost control of me. And I know that there's respect both ways, that if I had to stop or change or detour or whatever, we would both be okay.
Yeah. I mean, that used to break me because it meant something about me, right?
Yeah.
So we got to stop doing that. And now it doesn't. We can. I love, like, we were just listening to a session the other day, and really they talked about how for some reason in every other part of our lives, we feel like we can try something, and if it doesn't work, then it's like, oh, that wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go away from it. But for some reason in the sexuality, and I don't know if it's the connotation around it that we put together because of the high religious background and what sex means and what we were taught and our cultures and so forth. But for some reason, if we tell ourselves like, oh, we can't even go close to that, because if we touch any of that bad stuff there and that we get to something that's bad, then we'll be done. It will ruin our marriage. It would be, Satan's slippery slope. We'll be done.
And I think there are some certain boundaries that each couple has to have, because sexuality, let's be honest, can become dangerous and can cause harm outside of clear boundaries. But also within those boundaries, there is so much room to explore.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big ones, if let's stop, just being vague about this, let's use one of our examples. For a long time, oral sex was like totally off the table.
Right.
Like, on good. We'd put cultural things around it, like it was bad,
Mm-hmm.
and that we shouldn't do it. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, like if we tried to go sex, we weren't going to hell, and our marriage wasn't going to burn to the ground. Right. So,
Or deconstruct.
Yeah. So how does that, I guess yes, I agree. There's certain boundaries. That you gotta
For
put into
example,
it,
we're
like,
not going to take our sexuality outside of the
Right.
marriage. So
Yeah.
that is a boundary that,
and you've coached couples that have decided to do that, and you didn't hold that against
but
them.
that was their
decision.
boundary.
That was their boundary. That's what I'm saying. So I guess I'm saying I don't want to define boundaries here,
Right.
because that's what we get into. Like, if you're waiting for Amy and Greg to tell you all the things that are good, like oral sex is okay, threesomes are bad. Like if you want that checklist, you're not going to get it from us because we can't do that for you because again,
that's yours.
Growing up and owning yourself is at the core of what allow you to be intimate. And I don't care who it is. If you're waiting for God himself to send you a list of, you can do these 5 things in bed, but you can't do these 4, it's not going to happen. God is not going to send that list for 1. And 2, you will not grow into an intimate person because you won't take ownership of what you want and desire and what boundaries you want to put together and be able to talk those. And there's boundaries that I don't have that you have, right? Mm-hmm. And then we have to negotiate those things and those boundaries. Mm-hmm. And that's part of growing into the sexual relationship.
I think what it really asks us is to have that internal center. The way some people say it is that internal locus of control. Because sexuality and intimacy is so exposing, if you don't have trust in yourself, which I didn't, and myself, I absolutely did not, then the anxiety around this is so high. I think there will always be a little anxiety just because it is so naturally vulnerable and exposing, and that's like part of anxiety. But there's trust that the vulnerability, the exposure will be for goodness or for pleasure or for mutual connection. And that's what allows me to move forward in it. And I think because I know that in the midst of all of it, I still have control of me.
You know what I just thought? I thought it was really interesting.
Tell me.
This negotiation between each other is oftentimes more erotic and more of a turn on than the actual act itself. If I think about it.
Yeah.
This talking and negotiating and finding out where you were coming from and having agreement and thinking, would you really do this? And I will try this. And that whole thing is a catalyst of eroticism to me. It excites me. It can get me very turned on just going at that part. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when we decide to try something new, that's not even as exciting as negotiating it.
Right. The anticipation of it.
Yeah. Like talking about it, like, oh, you would really go do that. But yeah. So even just the being open and honest with each other and negotiation, I think is a great turn on. It's a wonderful way of being intimate itself. It's in that negotiation where you find the ability to trust each other and try new things and be willing to say, okay, I'm okay not trying that new thing. And it really causes you to be close. So it's part of, I think, the ability to not only deal with it yourself, like we talked about me, like understanding my anxiety and dealing with it, but as a couple, being able to negotiate, talk, cherish each other in a way that you're able to share truly what you desire, that helps not only resolve that anxiety, because you're not taking away from you, you're really just collaborating together, but also helps grow that intimacy and eroticism.
I think I totally agree. I'm also thinking of how when we're anxious, it leads to try and control others, right? So in the anxiety, unprocessed and raw, the higher desire is trying to control the lower desire spouse, and the lower desire spouse is trying to push away the higher desire spouse, which are both outside control moves. When you start to metabolize the anxiety more, instead of trying to control the other person, you're trying to decide and choose and control yourself. And so that's that like internal center of control. And that is what allows for more collaboration. Because say, for example, if I am in anxiety and you suggest something to me, now all I will feel is pressure. But if I am not in a space of having to control you or fulfill you or manage your eroticism and desire, I can hear that and I can be like, well, that's, interesting or not interesting or amazing or horrible or whatever it is that I may think, scary, terrifying, wonderful, exciting, whatever the reaction might be, and still be okay because I know that I have choice.
Right. And we can negotiate those things, right?
We can
talk,
negotiate.
we can talk about them.
But if I don't feel like I have choice or control over me, anything you suggest is now pressure. And that then I'm trying to control you so I don't feel anxiety.
It seems like every road we go down comes to the same trailhead.
Yeah.
It comes to the trailhead of choice. I'm having a deep conversation with one of my clients just a few weeks ago, and we were trying to tease out the difference between being enmeshed, toxic independent, and being differentiated in the middle. And he was asking really good, deep questions that made me think, because when you get in that differentiation part, a lot of it looks both enmeshed and toxic independent. And when he asked those questions, we always came back to one very core thing, that if I was doing something out of choice, that's what real true differentiation was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in differentiation, when you're in this relationship, you desire to be yourself, but you also desire to be acted upon by the other person. You want to care enough about that person to what they do has impact to you and what you do has impacted them. But instead of it just driving itself like it does in enmeshment,
mm-hmm.
you're choosing to make that choice and giving into that out of a logic choice instead of a reactionary choice, trying to soothe your anxiety or change something. So I find it interesting, just even when we talk about here, like we've gone all over these maps and back and forth and back and forth. And no matter where we end up, we kind of always end up at choice.
We do, because in the end, we're all trying to just feel safe, and we all have anxieties over creating that safety. And the way that we often deal with anxiety is controlling others. But the way that we actually create a less amount of anxiety or processing through that is really bringing it back to, who do I want to be? What do I choose? How do I want to move forward? What do I want to create? They're all very much based in the self, in the sense of self, and having that inner locus of control, instead of trying to get it from someone else or block someone else so that you feel it, right? Like that's still, whether you're pressuring someone or blocking someone, you're still externally trying to control yourself.
Right. When you finally realize the only thing you can control
is you,
period.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes an intimate relationship intimate is that you're willing to ask for the other person and know that they may say yes and they may say no.
Or maybe this.
Or maybe something different. But in the end, you're going to ask and know you have zero control over what they do. But you're willing to be close enough to put your idea out there, or your desire out there, or your needs out there, or your wants out there, whatever you want to define them as in this relationship. You're willing to put it out there and deal with the reaction. And we've talked a lot about this week too, and we probably need to do a whole episode on keeping score.
Oh yeah, we were talking a lot about that.
We need to do an episode on it, but I think that's part of that, right? Because you're trying to control the other person and you're keeping score of like, well, I did this for you and I did that for you. And
therefore
I did this.
You
like
need to give me this.
10 marks on my page and you have 0. So get working on it. Right? And man, I was so into that. And really when you come to the table in intimacy, it's not about the me, it's about the we, right?
Right. Creating a we, but you have to have a strong enough me first to create the we.
Yep.
And I think where the lower desire sometimes is misunderstood is they feel like it's strength to just block out the other person.
Right.
They're like, no, this is me. I am so, like rigid walls all around. And to be a solid person doesn't mean you have rigid walls all around you. It means you're comfortable enough in yourself to actually be in the presence of others.
No, I find this very funny because going through this whole process has impacted almost every part of my life. I think even in politics, like I was so ideologic. Is that how you say that word? You
were so into ideology?
Yeah.
I don't think ideologic is a word.
I think it is. I don't know what it is, but anyway,
well,
I was very, this is the right politics and you're going to be this way. And I am going to
maybe dogmatic in your ideologies.
Toe the party line because it's right. And if you're not in this party, then you're wrong. And I cannot see around it. I was so visceral in the way that I approach politics. And I was having an interesting conversation with my sister a few months ago, and I heard her in that manner, and I was like, whoa, and it like kind of slapped me in the face, and realized even in that part of life now that I've become more pragmatic, and I've been able to be safe to step out and say, well, maybe the person of this political persuasion has something that's true. Mm-hmm. What might be true about what they're saying, mm-hmm. and what might I accept as part of me, instead of being so fearful that if I stepped over there that I would be in that evil camp, or I would be wrong, or I'd have to accept all of it, and that would be crazy. I couldn't do that. And so,
but that's the anxiety, right? I can't hear others' opinions, or I might find out that I'm wrong, or I need to update something. And so again, people become overly rigid from anxiety.
Yeah. And when I've learned to deal with that, I've found myself, and I hadn't realized it so much again, except hearing it from somewhere else. And I was like, and it really just kind of slapped me in the face. So, and I think in all realms of my life, I've become more of being willing to peer into what that means, be okay with myself, knowing that doesn't mean I have to go jump into that pool, but sticking my toes in it may not be a bad idea to understand what it is, mm-hmm. and being able to choose for myself what it means and how it impacts my life. And if it's something that impacts me for good, then I can put it in and use it. And if it's not, then I can dismiss it. And so really, it is about sending yourself in that place, mm-hmm. but then inviting your partner to come in with you and collaborating. Collaboration is another big word that we use. Mm-hmm. Collaborate to make
collaboration.
Add a choice. Yeah, make this relationship and that be what makes it become intimate.
I also just want to add, when you stop reacting to try and mitigate your anxiety, so reaction might be pursuing, or it might be walling or guarding off. When you move from that reaction to responding and choosing, it can be a very terrifying transition. It can feel like very unfamiliar territory, and you're not really sure what to do. You only know, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And that's totally okay. That's a very good next step. Just stopping a pattern and recognizing, okay, from say a lower desire stance, I know I've been overly rigid. I know I want to learn to appreciate my sexuality.
I mean, you're not
more.
just going to close down the walls right then and do everything in bed?
No.
Come on. Give us higher desire. Just please, just say that's how it happens. Like you show up one day and you're just freaky in bed.
Nope.
I thought I'd try. Sorry, higher desire people.
You take the next step, and it can feel very scary. And then from that step, you take the next step. Even if you don't know the whole path and journey, just keep trusting the next step.
Yeah. Well, we want to say being human is wonderful. It creates a lot of problems and messes, but when you can address some of those things, it becomes wonderful, because we're the only species on the earth that can actually have an intimate relationship, because we put meanings around sexuality, and that's what makes it beautiful. So a lot of things can copulate, but they can't really make love, and we're blessed to be able to do that. So know that the anxieties you're having are normal. They're part of being human. Mm-hmm. And we hope that if there's any way that we can help you, that you will allow us to do that.
Yeah.
You can either join us for a free consult by going to linkforlifecoaching.com and clicking that little button.
You can join us at our workshop that's coming up.
Come join us at our workshop. We'll talk about this. Keep listening, liking, subscribing, adding comments,
review.
All those things will help you and will help us, and it's what we love doing.
Yes. We hope we helped you in this episode to see some way, if you felt nudged or inspired, or like, oh yeah, that's my next step to creating more love and less control, leaning into focusing on how you can take ownership of yourself so that you don't have to control others. We hope you'll listen to that and really follow through. And if you want to tell us what you heard and what you're trying and what you're doing, feel free to email us. It's either Amy at Langford Life Coaching or Greg at Langford Life Coaching.
We'd love to hear it.
We would.
All right, go sign up for that workshop. We can't wait. And until next time,
keep undressing your intimacy.
Bye-bye.